Folks, I've always told my kids that the weird sort of popularity metric that people use in high school is not the one that people use in the rest of life. That somehow this sort of popularity hierarchy comes down somewhere in middle school, high school, and everybody stays in that station for the rest of their time in high school, in middle school. That's just the way it is. And it's really not based on whether you're a nice person. Sometimes it's based on how much money you have, but it's just sort of all a very strange metric. And it really doesn't correlate to how people end up in life. People who were not popular in high school end up having gazillions of friends and being incredibly successful. Outside of high school, people who had a ton of friends in high school often end up peaking in high school and not doing that great in the rest of their lives and losing a lot of friends because they were actually assholes. But for some reason, that worked in high school. So I always tell them, don't worry about that metric, because if you are a quality person, then you're going to have a quality life. That's just the way it is. Well, I was thinking about this because, I kind of think that the rest of the world, I think they are really starting to realize that we're not in high school anymore. And that metric, that weird metric, that kind of high school arbitrary metric of popularity doesn't apply anymore. And now that we're out of high school, if America wants to lead with assholery, well, America's going to be lonely. They're just not going to have friends, because if you're not going to be a quality country, then you're not going to have quality buddies. Sorry. Nobody wants to do business with people who lead with their assholery. Nobody wants to be buddies with people who can't be relied on. And I think it's going to be really surprising for the MAGA cult to realize that other people in the world don't actually tie themselves to the dead weight. They don't actually stick around and try to be friends with the person who puts them down all the time. They don't actually hang in there just because somebody used to have a station of popularity at some point. Well, yeah, I think the rest of the world has enough dignity to drop us, to just leave us. And isn't that going to be interesting when MAGA realizes that they were not the bee's knees to begin with? And once they showed who they really were, everybody else in the world was like, why would I want to hang around with you ever again? You suck. And then they were gone. And you know what? We deserve that. But I do think that that's a lesson that, the MAGA world needs to learn. They really, really do. Because they have somehow skirted by without needing to be quality of any type. Anything, honestly. It's like they're the anti-quality people. Literally, they have this weird idea, this weird theory that the bigger asshole you are, the better friends you're going to have. It's about time we test that theory, isn't it? Yeah, MAGAs, I'm afraid you guys are just going to be one insulated, lonely bucket of people. And the bucket's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller as you pick them off. People whose businesses you've ruined, they're not going to want to be friends with you. People whose parents you've bankrupted, they're not going to want to be friends with you. People whose children you've screwed out of a proper education, they're not going to want to be friends with you. So eventually you're going to hurt everybody and you're just going to be pretty freaking lonely in that bucket. So I would recommend that you get off your tuchuses now and start taking a hard look at yourselves and where you've gone wrong and where you've been incredibly lazy and where you really need to work on your character and on being a better part of community. Just being a better friend, a better person, somebody who deserves attention, someone who deserves their station in life. Because so far, I'm telling you, you have ridden off of the coattails of people who are far better than you. And for some reason, you thought just by virtue of being born in this place where you have all this privilege, that you are somehow a desirable friend for the rest of the world. Not so much. You actually have to put your money where your mouth is. You actually have to be a nice person. You actually have to show up and speak cogently and say nice things and be able to give and take and be right-sized in relationship. Fancy that. And now you've gone and become narcissistic schneedles with more assholery than any sort of kindness in your souls. And, you're just going to be in that lonely bucket. So it's a tough lesson for all of us to learn. But anywho, just some thoughts popping around in my head. Thanks for listening. I love you guys.